Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Frame by Frame UX Design Podcast. This is the next in-frame episode. We are your co-hosts, William Carson and Zach Orleski. And today, for funsies, we wanted to throw our episode intro into ChatGPT. We are not sponsored in any way, but we wanted to see how accurate or how fun of an intro this was going to give us. So here we go. Welcome to our latest episode where we delve into the art of continuous learning in product design and UX design. Discovery how embracing daily learning fuels not only personal growth, but also elevates industry relevance in a rapidly evolving landscape. Yet amidst the pursuit of excellence, let's address the recent wave of negativity saturating platforms like LinkedIn, exploring how we can foster a culture of support and collaboration. So if that wasn't too many words for you, today we are talking about just the importance of learning one new thing every day in your craft to get better as a designer, and also about the recent round of negativity and I'm quitting posts we've been seeing on LinkedIn. Not I'm quitting from my job, but I'm quitting this job search. I'm done looking for a job in this field. I'm going to try somewhere else. This has been torture, which we really hate to see. It's truly unfortunate that our industry is experiencing this. Zach, did you ever have a moment where you're like, you know what? Let me learn one new thing in this tool.
Yeah.
Every time I learn it.
Yeah. Every day. Some things you forget, so you have to relearn it anyway. Yeah. I mean, I read a lot of books, so I like to think I learn something every time I'm reading anyway, whether it be a turn of phrase or something useful in my job. But yeah, at work, I'm forced to learn new things regularly, stuff I had no idea about, and that's fine. I enjoy it. Some things are, for me, boring, then it's hard to learn it, but at the same time, it's if I know I have to, there's a reason to learn it. Then you don't move to Germany and not try to learn German. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
for me, I guess the absolute clearest example that I have of actually telling myself I'm going to learn one new thing every time I take X action or Y event happens was at the beginning of my Career Foundry Bootcamp. I had zero design experience, and I knew that I was going to get into Figma going forward. So I decided, like, you know what? Let me start using Figma early before it's mentioned, before it's required, and I will force myself to learn one new feature or use one new piece of the tool every time every day that I happen to be working on Figma. And that ended up being such a great reinforcement tool for myself, because then I ended up using on day 4, I would use skill number 4 on day 5, and then also learn skill number 5, and it would help me reinforce number 4
you're
and
just
learn
skill
number
building
5 at the same time.
Exactly. You're leveling
And,
up. I mean, same concept.
And that ended up doing wonders for my ability to use Figma. There were times where I went to YouTube and I said, hey, I don't know, just Figma features, go.
Yeah.
And just follow tutorials from the big names in that space.
I mean, Figma makes it easy too, because it's so easy to find out how to do things. Like, there should be no reason you can't teach yourself. And if you're new to something, don't see something and be like, oh, I'm going to learn how to do that, because you should probably learn the basic stuff first. So, or at least get good with it. I make a mess when I'm in Figma now, because I'm not required to be there all the time. Like, currently I'm doing our design system, so I'm not building components anymore. And that's things I see when I'm doing stuff in Figma sometimes, where I'm like, oh, I need to just go back and play with building these things just to refresh and then possibly improve upon. Even though I don't currently have to, it's not to say I might not have to again in the near future. So it would almost be detrimental to not keep improving on a skill.
Yeah.
Obviously, time is always a factor with things, but you should always, like I said, I read a lot, and just take the time to learn that one new thing every day. Read something. Read the newspaper every day. You'll learn
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah.
It's not
My
you.
favorite example from reading is that, or at least the way I like to spin it, is that you get to gain the benefits of other people's user research.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
And I think that's wildly valuable.
there's a book called Influence.
Okay.
It's a heavy read about like behavioral science and
Mm-hmm.
psychology, and then but it's a great book. It's a super great read, and you cannot not learn something. Like if you read that book, something will stick, especially with the way
Mm-hmm.
they give examples of some things that might be more complex than just hey, this and this equals this. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
you know a lot behind human decision. But it's a
Yeah.
great book because by the end it's a thick book, and you've probably remembered or retained some of that information, and it'll only help you in your own work later. So
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah. Um, I think my favorite thing I've even learned from a product or UX design related book was from the one you recommended to me, um, user friendliness or user friendly.
oh
I think
yeah,
it's
that's a
user
great
friendly.
book.
There's one section where they talk about, I don't remember the company, but they talk about one company that was making a self driving car, and they ran it through some tests with real people to see how real people responded to it. And they realized that the more polite the car acted, like as if it were a polite driver behind the wheel, then the more comfortable people felt with the car. So if the car took like a long time to come to a stop at a stop sign, like it started decelerating really early, people perceived that as more polite, and then they felt more comfortable crossing the sidewalk,
Yeah,
or
you're not getting
crossing the
hit by
street.
that car. It's like an
Hmm.
obvious
Yeah, yeah.
outcome. It's like, oh, they're braking. Okay, I can go.
Hmm. But then just reading those couple paragraphs probably saves you months of research time if you were to design a self-driving car.
Yeah, absolutely. Like somebody did the
Hmm.
test. Here's the results. They're there. You just have to learn them. You have to know that
Hmm.
they exist. Um, so it has. I mean, people are using AI instead of learning with a lot of things now. Like I don't have to read the book. I can get a summary written to me. Um,
Hmm.
could the same be said for design in general? Like, okay, here's your UX patterns. They're all pretty general. The testing's all been done for various products. So just take one variation of it. Do you think there's a way that it's like AI generated solutions? Like, here's the most common solutions to all these varied problems, and here's your generalized solution for this.
Maybe trying to spin that in the context of learning something new every day. Um, Part of the result of learning something new every day, or at least every time X action happens, or whatever, um, it helps you with speed with something else. Either you don't need to take an action because you figured it out already, um, or you're just faster at performing the task. So let's see. If I were to take like the AI's recommended most common solution for a specific problem set, I think it that might be good because then you can just auto decide like, all right, cool, let me build out some user flows and conduct some user tests with this most common solution, and like I can skip the decision making phase, go straight to that, test that, see if it'll actually work. If it works, cool, I've reduced a ton of time in the decision making process. If it doesn't work, cool, I've figured out what doesn't work about it because I went straight to testing, or because I went straight to building the most common answer and then testing.
So it
um,
speeds you up. You're still going to have
I
to
see
learn
that
a bunch
working.
of things in the process.
Yeah, how to write a good prompt in ChatGPT, which I really wrestled with over the last week and a half with my work. I do tool I was building.
I think prompts are tricky. I mean, it's it's not that you have to code anything to the computer. It's just how you can make the program understand
Mhm.
what's in your
How
human
strict you
head.
are with your
Yeah,
language. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, one one. world in which I applied the like learn one new thing every time you touch it was with AI image generation. So I picked up a subscription to Midjourney for a couple months just to
Ooh,
try it
Midjourney
out,
is good.
so
Yeah.
I could actually be able to talk about it. And I ended up learning a bunch of the attributes that you could throw on the end. And
See, that stuff I never like. I know you can change like the aspect ratio and stuff like that. I just
mhm,
never put it to memory. It was like, I mean, because I
mhm,
paint, like I have all my paintings and
mhm,
stuff in my room, so it's AI generation is good if you need a reference for something. I'm noticing, like you can get a general picture of something you're looking for, or even like the lighting for something you'd like to do, and that's a reference I can look at.
mhm.
But I don't have the time to sit there and write a paragraph and like perfectly thought
Yeah,
out prompts. I'd rather just
mhm,
get it out of my head. But
yeah,
that goes back to learning too. Like I've had to learn different mediums for art. I've had to learn to use different techniques for certain things. And it's if you don't know that, it doesn't help you in digital art either because it's similar,
mhm,
especially if you're using like a um, illustration pad, like a Wacom tablet. So if you're using a drawing tablet, I mean, no, it's not paper, but you can you can adjust your program to look like what you do on paper or
gotcha.
possibly improve it. But
Hmm.
it's I think it's the same time to output ratio. Like as much
Yeah,
time in, this is all I'm getting out. Yeah, okay, I would have more done if I just started painting something. So
mhm, yeah. For me with Midjourney, the very first day or the first session I had with it was just me throwing words at it, seeing what it was capable of, and also realizing that I am not familiar with art language, not at
that
all.
helps. That definitely helps.
Um,
Yeah.
and learning that I had no clue how to speak that language was super valuable because it meant I had a plan for what to learn then. Um, from there on out, I started figuring out the different attributes. I would use one in one session. I would try using two the next, three the next, experimenting with the different values you can throw into those attributes. At the end, I was able to get more accurate results since I had become more comfortable with the language and more comfortable with the attributes. Nowhere near perfect, but more comfortable. And after I had stopped paying for the subscription and lost it, um, I had seen some posts from a Mid-Journey person on LinkedIn, and he said, "Hey, here's some of the attributes you should be using to get what you want." And I realized I knew every attribute in that list, and I was like, "Wow,
Ah,
two
see,
months ago,
perfect.
I
Yeah,
didn't know any of these. This is crazy."
that's awesome.
Um, and that was a big like wow moment for me. Like, wow, the effort I put into the tiny bit of effort I put into just googling Mid-Journey attributes and just making sure to add one on every session um, ended up paying off big time because now I know how to talk about it. Maybe I don't remember the exact syntax, but I know I can jump back in and get it
It's
back
it,
quickly.
yeah, it's more of a riding a bike scenario to use a very popular cliche. Like you're not going to
Mm-hmm.
forget. You might not be great anymore. You might fall down, but it's
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to forget how to
Mm-hmm.
ride a bike. You need momentum to stay up. Um,
Mm-hmm. And so that the time that I'd spent learning and getting better at Midjourney resulted in severely reduced time between having the idea and getting a result that I was happy with. Um,
you
and the
weren't
same can be said.
you weren't
Huh?
retyping for an hour trying to
No,
get the idea. Yeah,
no. The same can be said for Figma because like I'm a big keyboard shortcuts fan. Love that stuff. Like I switch tabs and everything using keyboard shortcuts. I go to the command bar, not command bar, wow, address bar, open new tabs, close new tabs, open most recently completed tab, all that stuff. And so when I figured out that you could do all this in Figma too, I was like, all right, I'm learning all of these, but one at a time.
my work louder Figma keypad comes on Wednesday. So
Ooh,
yeah,
cool.
I've been waiting a long time. They finally sent it. So
Nice.
I'm excited. That's less key commands I have to remember because I have like Adobe
Mm-hmm.
Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, I have Premiere Pro,
Mm-hmm.
Lightroom, all these different key. I mean, some are really they're designed well. The product is designed well because most of the programs, they're relatively the same. Some things might change a little bit. The part that was hard for me is switching between my English keyboard and my German keyboard,
Mm,
because you can't
I'm
use
sure that's rough.
like you can't use Apple Z for undo. I think that was in Photoshop. It does a
Hmm.
totally different command. So yeah,
Huh.
it gets interesting. But no, other things you have to learn. See, learn something every day.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least one thing.
And they compound like crazy.
Yeah, and
Um,
if you how many hours is that? They say it's like 100 hours in a year or something. And you'll be better than like 90% of the people doing what you're trying to do. I'll
hmm,
have don't quote me on it.
interesting.
It's something like that.
Yeah. I know there are those two other numbers. There's the 100,000 hours to be like top of the top of the top, like expert. Um,
It's like 20 minutes a day.
that,
If you do it 20 minutes a day for a year, you'll be better than X amount of people in the field, and
yeah.
it's a pretty
Hmm,
high percentage. But
hmm. Um, but then you don't have to be putting in 100,000 hours if you don't need to be the absolute top of whatever you're doing.
no, but if you can
There
get
was,
super good at it, like in no
yeah,
time at all, like
yeah,
think about how 20 minutes a day you probably spend that scrolling through TikTok reels. Like if you just put that into learning something to add on to a skill you already possess, you'll be
yeah,
twice as good at that skill the next day. So
yeah. Or if you spend those 20 minutes trying to talk without using ums, ahs, or stuttering, like your speaking ability is going to go crazy. Um, and I just used so
it's part of modern English. It's
yeah.
fine.
Uh, so a good result or a good example that I have for the results of learning something new, like every time I log in, is with my current work in which I'm using Bubble. So when I first started using Bubble, I got used to the visual elements that you could place on the page, and that was the first thing I learned. I learned how to edit radius, color, font, stuff like that. After that, it was going into the settings to create different styles. In Figma, this would be um, setting your like component library, stuff like that. Once that happened, I got used to interactions. Eventually, I got introduced to back end interactions. So, where data is moving through, how it's moving through, how it's being manipulated. And the most recent thing that I've finally come to understand has been how the plugins work and how plugins will introduce new actions and interactions into the app that you're not familiar with because it's not native. You have to learn it from scratch. And Prentice, the company I work for, and the tool that I work on, we have this one feature called a LinkedIn Analyzer or AI LinkedIn Analyzer. Go to your profile, type in your LinkedIn extension or your LinkedIn URL extension, hit analyze, and then it'll take 30, 45 seconds. It'll look at your LinkedIn and give you a bunch of feedback. For some reason, the plugin actions that are brought in through the plugins that allow us to do this confuse the hell out of me. Like they are awful. Not good. And last week, I created a new tool called the AI Resume Analyzer. But I had to add a couple things on at the very end that had to do with pulling in like all of your education from LinkedIn. And I realized that we were only pulling in the first education that you have linked listed on LinkedIn. I had to figure out how to pull all of them, which uses the same plugin that is currently used for the LinkedIn Analyzer. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. It was like late on a Friday. I there were like two things left to finish implementing this resume stuff. And I got to that. And I'm like, no, not this workflow. This workflow has bothered me for like a full month. So I sat down, I built what I thought would be an okay first draft to pull in all of the different educations, and it actually worked first try,
oh, nice.
which has never happened for me. Um, with anything from that plugin. And so I was psyched. I went straight to my company Slack and I posted in general, like, huge win for me at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. This worked almost perfectly first try. And I've been full time for a month, and I've now gotten to the point where I can make that thing that gave me troubles work on a first iteration.
That's pretty
Which,
great.
like, if I had approached that in week number 1, it probably would have taken me multiple hours, if not days, to get that first iteration to get that iteration to work. So, like, that for me was a massive example of, like, oh, I actually learned something. And it worked. And the result of me learning something was that I can save a massive amount of time, which then makes me look more impressive to my boss or stakeholders and stuff.
That's how that works for a minute. You just got to keep doing it.
Just keep suffering with it.
Just keep doing it, yeah. No, that's pretty great, though. Like, I would not be able to do my job if I didn't purposely go out of my way to learn things. Like, I would be terrible at my job if I didn't go out of my way to learn things, because it doesn't matter which project you're on, it's never going to be exactly like another project. And especially the one I'm in, I was familiar with taxes, but this is a total different tax law. It's not U.S. tax law, and this is German tax law, and then there's like the data security and privacy attached to that on top of the things we're dealing with, and it's like, this is super complicated. There's a lot of rules I have to learn on top. So, like, as a designer, especially a product designer or anybody that designs with digital products, websites, anything like that, pay attention to what the rules are where you're at, because you could design something great and you could potentially, depending on what industry you're in or what country you're in or what guidelines the internet works by there, you are required to follow those rules. And so it doesn't matter what kind of company you work for. That should be your number one, I guess, if you're learning stuff in our industry.
Yeah.
But it's not hard to learn those things. You just have to spend 15 minutes a day for whatever it is that's interesting you. So if it's the law, you don't have to learn the law. You don't have to be a lawyer. It's just good to know where your responsibilities lie, like within that area. Like, you're a designer, you're making designs and products for a company that, like here, if they're hosted online, or you're in a company that is for profit, then you have to have certain things on your website and located in a certain way, like your impressium and your data and stuff for people has to be located easily on whatever page. It doesn't matter if you're a digital web app or not. It has to be like, if you have a dashboard, it can be no more than 2 clicks and it can't be hiding it. Like, it's got to be very obvious where it's located anyway. And there's just weird stuff like that. So it's good to pay attention to, but you'll never know that if you don't just, I wonder why it works that way. Look it up, learn it. It takes 5 minutes on Google. Yeah. So
for me, a good example or a good analog to that would be in Bubble, each data type has a list of privacy rules. But when you create a data type, there are no rules because it's empty. I didn't know anything about privacy rules going into this. So I'm pretty sure what's happened since I started working for Prentice is that I would create a data type. I would not know anything about the privacy, or even that I had to add privacy rules. I think my boss would just come in and do it secretly,
just
himself.
Yeah, like, it's missing this.
And I only realized, like, last week when I created a new data type, and my boss actually said something like, "Hey, maybe the thing you're looking for is missing because of the privacy rules. Go check those out." I was like, "The what?"
Wait, there's a rule book?
So then I went in and I was like, "Oh no, I have not done any of these. This has probably been my boss doing all of these the whole time."
You should just ask him.
So now I know privacy rules.
Just ask him, be like, "Hey, before you mentioned this to me, were you just taking care of it for me? Because I had no idea." No, that's good stuff to learn. Like, Figma's a great example of learning things. If you're interested, let's say, in gaming, I would start learning things about gaming UI. I would start learning things about player interaction. And we talked about it on an episode from our midweek, the out of frame, the Helldivers. Like, it's still a really good example of what a good product looks like. Like, it's
Mhm.
they do good stuff. And yeah, just if you're interested in something, learn everything you can about not only that specific or what you think is that specific thing, like UX design. Don't just
Mhm.
learn what you need to know that UX designers do. Like, you should learn everything you can about the things around that entire area,
Yeah.
because UI is coming to play more and more and more. So if you say you're a UX designer, it's guaranteed you're probably going to need to mess with some Figma skills at some point.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's
I know we mentioned at the beginning talking about LinkedIn negativity.
oh yeah.
We have gone the whole
I
episode
know. I'm
without touching
sorry.
on that. I'm sorry too. I forgot until just now. Um, yeah, I've been seeing more. I quit. I'm done with this. This is awful. This is impossible. Posts in the last couple of weeks,
It's hard.
and those
That's
posts
what it
do get a
is.
lot of attraction.
Yeah.
Um, which cool. That's good advertisement. I wouldn't say it's good branding. It's a good advertisement though. And it's so hard to see these from people. Some of these posts come from people with zero results. Some of these posts come from people who are getting interviews but just not landing the offers, which which is wild to me that they would quit because I had zero interviews throughout my entire job search, zero.
When I
Um,
started my job search, at one point there was a time I was like, uh, I mean, I'll hang in there as long as I can applying. I'm not going to
yeah,
quit doing what I like doing. So, uh, yeah, I've always had projects and things I like doing. Like, to me, design doesn't die. I'm just technically not doing it right now. Like,
mhm,
that's not a thing. So I would never say I quit. Like, the current job market, if you need a job, don't quit looking for a design job. Don't quit looking. Don't quit working on it. That's when it just becomes something you wanted to do and not something you went for. Um,
mhm.
I mean, you work sushi restaurant. It's fine. Like, that's just how
Still
that
there,
goes.
almost
Yeah.
done with student loans.
Like it's not bad to just do what you need to do sometimes. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. Um,
I
and
think
if you
it's
really enjoy doing something, you probably find yourself doing it anyway. So now that let's say you went to a boot camp, now you know how to document all these stupid ideas you might have a notebook full of somewhere in your house. Um, it's great to have those ideas, but now you have a process for how you can actually expand upon them and actually try to take some of them further. And I'm not just
mhm.
talking digital products here. I'm talking anything. T-shirt idea? Okay, what's your next step? Do a little research.
Yeah,
See what color shirt would sell better. It's stuff like that. Like, you can still get in the design industry. It will only help you in other design industries later. So be a little more open to the job market. Like, if you can't get UX right now, okay, next best thing. What are you good at design wise? Okay, do you possess any of those skills after your boot camp? Try that. Like, go for it. You're going to do freelance
dive
one way or
deeper than what
another.
you did in boot
Yeah.
camp.
Like, and that's the other thing. Don't quit. Go freelance. Keep a job. Work a restaurant job, whatever you have to do. UX design is actually something you could probably freelance, like, in your spare time. Like, if you're not working at a restaurant, take the time that you sit around complaining or playing video games or whatever it is that you're doing, that you're not using that time to design or create something. Otherwise, yeah, like, there are reasons to quit, but you shouldn't ever just,
Mhm.
don't let it break you. Maybe take a pause, like, step back from the job that's making you crazy to try to find right now, because
Mhm.
that's only going to make it worse. Just expand
Yeah,
your horizons as far as design goes. And if that's still not an option, or you feel like that's not an option and you think you have to give up, like, go work a sushi rail. Like, just throw sushi for a job to keep your lights on, but just keep it in the back of your head. Like, okay, there's always that possibility as long as I just keep doing the thing that interested me in the first place. Um,
Mhm.
it'll open more doors, and
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't hurt to do free work. That happens too. Like find a local business that could use a web page or a online store. It doesn't matter. Like if
Mhm.
even if you don't want to design on e-commerce stuff, it's actually not a bad avenue to like get your feet wet. And if you know somebody who owns a small mom and pop clothing shop in a small town, make them an app. Like when customers come in, they
Mhm.
can scan a product and bring it up to the counter, whatever. Like figure it out. You'll there's problems everywhere.
Mhm.
But just don't quit. I don't know. It sucks. It's hard to
Yeah.
hear because some people are super talented and they just
Yeah.
are in it at a bad time. And I don't want people to think I'm calling anybody lazy. Like I'm just pointing out that there are options. They're not the most glamorous to take if your idea is that you were gonna come out of the boot camp as like a star player, as a UX designer. Like everybody's looking for a product designer right now, and they're calling them UX designers. They want you to do everything,
Mhm.
and they're blanketing it with UX. But
Right.
I mean, yeah, I'm not calling people
One
lazy.
thing.
I just don't like seeing people give up when there's options to somehow still
Yeah.
hang in there, even partially. Like if your foot's in the water, you're still wet. Yeah. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that has been interesting about it is that I think I see these posts from people who already have been working full time UX or full time product who have been laid off. I think it's the laid off people that I'm seeing these posts from, and it's almost like baffling to hear that or to see that from a bootcamp grad's perspective. Because from our perspective, I might think like, oh, you already have the experience. This like it should be easier for you. But there's also, and I might be wrong here, but I think there's also a big like mental difference in that bootcamp people, we know we have to keep building our skills. We are in a season of
it's just
drilling our
constant
skills
learning. Like you're
really hard.
just doing it.
Right. If you have been doing it for a while already, maybe you're not in that season of your life anymore. Maybe you're just like, yeah, I've already proven that I can be paid for this. So I don't need to go super hard with extra skills right now. Um, I wonder if maybe that's the struggle that those people are experiencing. Of course, some people are absolutely still building skills, but I wonder if that's the primary reason why.
Mm,
Maybe, maybe not.
it kind of, there's a quote I really like, and it's like you can earn your title, but you have to keep working to keep your title.
Mm.
Like
And that's especially true for our industry now. Yeah.
yeah, like all these boot camp people are hungry. Like they found something they really like. I mean, there is a point where I think a lot of people were doing it because they were like, the boot camps were, oh, do you want to make uh, almost $100,000 a year to be a designer, and it'll happen in 6 months? And it's like, there's no, you
Yeah.
can't promise that to people, and especially
Yeah.
now.
You can go to college for 4 years and still not get a job. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally possible. I know enough people who hold college degrees and they work in restaurants, and I'm like, you went to school for what? Why are you working behind a bar? Yeah, it actually pays more, and I can't get a job doing what I want to do. And it's like, oh, okay. So I guess
Yeah.
that's how that works now.
Mhm.
No, I don't know. It sucks seeing people get discouraged, but at the same time, I don't want to see somebody really say they give up. That's fine. Like you use whatever words you want. I would just rather somebody say like, hey, I'm taking this time to work on whatever. Like, don't give up, but you don't have to publicly denounce your design interests
Mhm.
or anything. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of bad because if they come back later and still want to work in it, but then they had that mentality of, oh, well, I'm just going to quit, and they take a break. Well, now you're falling behind because there's a lot of things happening really fast all the time. It's,
Mhm.
the design tools just keep growing. It doesn't matter. It's never going to stop. Um,
Mhm.
and I really like somebody somebody else posted something about Figma, and they're like, Figma's one of the greatest tools, but some of the greatest products in history have been beat by somebody else. So like, look at, you know,
Yeah.
Adobe got beat by Figma. They knocked XD right off. Like it
Hmm.
didn't matter. So it's
Yeah. And that's people too, with leadership, with individual contributors.
I mean, look what happened
Yeah.
with Arrowhead and Sony. The
Right.
players went in and they told Sony like, your game of
No,
the
screw
year is
you.
about to be the game of never in a minute. So
The flop of the year.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna wrap this up soon, but I would like to go a little bit more high level first and just give everyone my favorite example of just building upon your skills or upon your brand or upon something productive every day. Because building something every day or learning something every day can also apply to your LinkedIn network. It can apply to your brand. It can apply to your portfolio, everything. Um, I am currently the only full time person at my company besides the founder, which I think technically makes me number two.
How is it?
I it's a lot. I'm not going to be number two for very long. Eventually, someone will come by with more decision making power and higher responsibilities than me, and that's fine. That's expected. The goal was to not become number two at a company. The goal was to eventually get paid for doing UX or product design work and to enter the actual product world, hopefully on the startup side. But I had zero design or tech experience or zero design experience before I started my bootcamp. My degree, which I earned in 2019, was in computer engineering. So I have a little bit of prior stuff that I can spin into relevant certification, I guess. Computer engineering is not computer science. It is not programming. So I'm not exactly able to say that I know dev work. I can talk to devs though. So that's the only prior green check mark that I had coming into this. I went into the boot camp. I did my best to learn something as much as I like learn something as often as possible and build upon things as much as possible, including skills and brand and network. And in 2 years and 3 months, I became number two at a startup, going from never never seriously touching the tech world to number two at a startup because I tried to learn something as much as I could. I tried to improve as much as I could. And I think that's the best example of a result from learning something new every day that you could possibly that I know of.
Yeah, I mean, and if you don't stop, it's never gonna slow down. You,
Yeah.
but
Um,
yeah, I mean, most of the people, if they are listening and they are a boot camp grad, which I think a lot will be, just because you did the boot camp didn't necessarily mean you were done learning. That was literally
right.
like popping the cap off. Like you still got a lot to go. Let's.
It's like here's a list of things you know that you have to learn now.
Yes. Now you know what you don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good luck. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I have nothing against boot camps. I just think it's the those of us who have went into boot camps or people thinking about boot camps or um, people thinking about self-educating and teaching themselves how to do design. I don't care what type of design you want to do. Learning it is totally possible. Are there some people who will burn us down for saying that? Yeah, because they have huge college degrees and a list of accomplishments, which is fine. That's great. But there is a time where they should look at design as any other thing. Like, I don't, it's not impossible for me to learn what I need to know to get more information about human psychology or color psychology or pretty much anything that has to do with designing a product or human interaction. And
Mhm.
as we're talking about, skill stacking to get your XP up to level, it's
Mhm.
that's all you're doing over and over again. You're just skill
Yeah.
stacking. So here, if you're doing a boot camp or self-learning, learn as much as you can about the first step and then start with the second, third, and tacking it on.
Mhm.
I mean, if you don't know anything yet, don't get discouraged. I'm not saying you won't learn anything in a boot camp or by self-learning. It helps to know where you have to go. So,
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of guys that were in research became just something you do. Like that's just part of it. There's no UX researcher anymore. Like I think at huge companies, yes, it's still a thing. But you have
Mhm.
startups where it's like your UX researcher is your UI designer as well, and they're also the one running the interviews and the one doing the
Mhm.
documentation and the one doing
They
the
look at
script. Yeah,
analytics.
and
They write the copy.
one person can't do it all and do it all perfect, but you can learn as much
Mhm.
as you can to be as good of an all arounder as you can be. I think that's
Mhm.
another misconception is like, yeah, there are those guys out there that can do it all, the unicorns or whatever. And it's like, well, we're not
Yeah.
unicorns. None of us are unicorns. It's just we know that this is what it's going to take for us to get that position or get those things done. Like, that's how I look at my job currently. It's like, what do I have to do to get these things done? Because they have to get done and I can't do them all anymore. There's now too much for me to
Yeah.
do. But luckily, I'm at the point where I have a team. So it's like, okay, I'm going to take this heap load over here and we're delegating
Yeah.
now. It's like, okay, I trust you with this where I can just, I love Nerea. She's a great designer.
Nice.
It's hard for me to relinquish like control over design files and stuff because I'm
Mhm.
particular about like how it's arranged or whatever. And now it's like, okay, I need you to design this, and we already have everything you need to know. It's here, here, and here. Pull it together and show me what you got at the end. We'll discuss it when you're done. And 90% of the time, I'm like, I'll probably look at it, and it's going to be one stupid thing that I want to change, and the rest is like almost, almost flawless.
Mhm.
Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, because there's times where she'll point out things that were in my initial design and she's like, I thought it'd be better if it's like that's what you need on your team. It's somebody that sees something and if they don't like it they tell you and then they already offer an example of like, so if we
Mhm.
just actually put this here and do it this way maybe that makes more sense. And it's like, yes, okay, thank you so much, you
Mhm.
have just saved my life as far as
Here's a paycheck. Yeah.
yeah. Thanks. um but I also like we had like a disagreement about something a couple weeks ago and I was just like, we're both pretty set on what we're thinking, and I think we're thinking the same thing, we're just using different words, and for some reason it's like the misunderstanding then happens and you're like, no, that's exactly
Yeah.
what I was saying. And then the next day I'm like, that's what it was. And she's like, I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, and it's exactly what we were both saying, the same thing, we just said it different ways.
Mhm.
And but then later that day she sent me something else and I was like, hey, I didn't want to sound snappy earlier, I wasn't meaning to be, I was just trying to like make it clear that I understand what you're saying, I think we're just saying it differently. And then
Mhm.
I was like, but I just also want you to know that you're doing like a super job, like this is like perfect, like you're a huge help. And then immediately I had to hang up and go send 4 emails and do a bunch of other stuff to our design system. And then it was yeah, it's just nice to trust, like even my devs, if I talk to any of my devs, it doesn't have to be our lead, as long as my lead knows what I'm going to tell them to do, it's fine usually. um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I can go to any of them and explain an idea and know that later I'll come back and it's pretty close. Like it's, I don't know all the lingo, so they try as hard as they can to understand I'm thinking sometimes. But I always offer
Mhm.
Figma examples when possible. It's like, all right, let me show
Yeah.
you, we're just going to go over a little prototype. So Um, but yeah, as a designer, it's definitely important to learn your Figma because prototypes do come in handy at some point where a dev is
Mhm.
like, how do you want this to react like when I do this? And it's like, oh yeah, here, just let me show you. And they're like,
Yep.
I know a plugin that kind of does that already. We're going to just put that in there. It's like, all right.
Nice.
So, but yeah.
Mhm. I think that does it for this in frame episode. So, yeah, if you're interested in getting the first paycheck in UX or product, or if you're interested in getting better, or if you want to ensure that you're not on the layoff list, then find something you don't mind sucking at. Find something you don't mind sucking at for a few hours, days, weeks, or months that eventually you won't suck at anymore. Because eventually you're going to be good at the thing. And if you're also improving your network, then people will also know you for being good at that thing. And
yeah,
your results will be crazy a year from now, crazy 2 years from now.
I know it's the end of the episode. I have one more thing. Have you noticed that that people know you now to be good at something, or you get it's almost like people have known you as a designer long enough, and now you have some kind of your network recognizes you as like, it's Will. He's involved with Prentice, and at some point I know we'll hear about you working with Bubble. You'll be somewhere. So
I think it's more like, I think I've pushed the confidence pretty far. Like one thing that when I posted online saying, "Hey, I got the full-time poll." Wow, I got the first full-time paycheck. It's here. And then Career Foundry also posted it onto their page. I got a lot of people reaching out to me, and most of the time I just request like, "Hey, do you want to just hang out over Google Meet for 30 minutes? I'd rather speak than type up a couple paragraphs."
yeah.
And I don't like to offer the same advice as what everybody else is going to tell them. I like to make sure I'm providing
coach.
yeah. I like to provide 2 specific points of information. And one of them is to do passion projects. I won't talk about that now. I've talked about it on previous episodes. The other one is to become a good speaker. I'm pretty sure I've talked about that on an episode here too. But I make it incredibly clear to people, hey, when you talk to someone who's a confident speaker, chances are you think that they know what they're talking about, and you think that they're good at what they're talking about because they speak with confidence. Yeah. So
be the TED Talks guy.
Yeah, exactly. Become a good speaker. It's harder. I mean, it's easier said than done.
Well, that takes speaking skills to say it anyway. So you're halfway there.
Yes,
it's almost finished.
And the speaking ability, it'll help you out in your conversations with stakeholders, in your conversations with recruiters, in your conversations with other employees, in your conversations with research interview participants,
hiring people,
everybody.
You. Yeah.
And if you look at any famous person, like of all time, they're pretty much all good speakers. They all know how to speak to a crowd. Young men nowadays love rap music. Rappers are amazing with words. I think the people who reach out to me now know me as someone who really likes to push being a good speaker. And even if they don't think I am, I think it's in the back of their head that that's part of my brand at this point. Even though it's not really a topic of my posts, and no one's going to go out there and say, "I'm a good speaker, listen to me." That's not a thing. I don't like to say that.
I'm a Bose.
Nice. Yeah, I think people know me for never posting about negativity. I think people know me for continuing to try and being okay with volunteering for a long time because it's what I like and it's what gives me fulfillment. Not the act of volunteering, but volunteering for Apprentice specifically because I like what they're about. So I think some people also know me for being crazy because so few people would volunteer for a whole year.
Yeah, but look at it helps,
Yeah.
It's sometimes I even tattooing and stuff, people ask for free. Sometimes they want free work. Mm-hmm. If you ask me for free work, it wasn't me volunteering my free work. And that's where doing passion projects, or even I don't know how many hours a week I do just vector designs for company logos and redesigns for people, and it's just like, it looked interesting. Here you go, take it. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
But it makes me better at certain things. Like if I wouldn't do that, I would probably have stopped using Illustrator just because I have no reason to be using it. And now I purposely go out of my way to find reasons to use it. Like, I actually just made a map for a D&D campaign for a game that's going on. But I did it in Illustrator, so it's like, I can scale it. I can do anything I want to it, and
yeah, that's so cool.
It's a nice skill to have learned. So yeah.
Speaking of D&D, that's going to be the topic of this week's Out of Frame episode. So I guess we're going to be done with this week's In Frame episode.
Have yourself a great...
We're going to hit the button, and then we're going to hit the button again and record for the D&D episode. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great whatever time of day it is for you. I should have gotten the outro written by ChatGPT as well.
It takes 2 seconds to generate. Just say, I need an outro for my podcast.
I need a 2-sentence outro for my podcast episode. Please, you got to add the please so that they let you live during the computer takeover. Now, as we wrap up, remember, every new insight gained is a step forward in your journey as a designer. Let's embrace positivity and knowledge sharing to propel our community towards greater innovation and success.
Wow. Thanks, ChatGPT.
Thank you, ChatGPT. Hashtag not sponsored. Talk to you next time, everybody. I was ready to say, hey, you know what? Let's ignore the LinkedIn stuff. Doesn't matter.
It's fine.